everyone, Wednesday evening's weather for Weather Geeks. It's the 5th day of October, getting this on a little bit late, apologize for that, but let's get right to it. And last evening we had something really interesting occur. We had a fireball over the sky in our region. Now, if you happen to be out at 10:36 last evening, you might have seen this. I've seen some reports, not necessarily in our region, but in some other places, of people hearing a sonic boom with that fireball, indicating that the meteor, which is likely what it was, actually penetrated pretty far down into the atmosphere before breaking apart. If any pieces of the meteor reach the ground, they are called meteorites. But a meteor is one that just burns up in the atmosphere. But nonetheless, that was pretty cool last evening. I've seen some cool videos and pictures. The American Meteor Society keeps track of these things, and this is a heat map of all the reports of seeing the fireball last night. And as you can see, there's a pretty big cluster around Pittsburgh, naturally where population centers are higher, Philadelphia. But notice, there were several reports in northeast Ohio, western PA, of seeing that fireball last evening. All right, no fireballs in the sky today, just the big ball of fire we call the sun. We had some clouds around this morning here and there, but just fair weather clouds, no big deal. It was a nice afternoon and a beautiful evening as well. Hopefully you could check out just after sunset Venus, very low in the southwest sky. The crescent moon is joined by Saturn just to the left of the moon, and then farther over to the left is Mars. You can always pick out Mars with the kind of red tint. You can even see that with the naked eye. All right, let's talk about Matthew this evening. Getting set to really do quite a number on the Bahamas, unfortunately. Here's the latest advisory: 115 mile per hour maximum sustained winds, moving northwest at 12. Pressure 962. Now, the storm is weaker than it was at this time last night, but it's getting into a very favorable environment for strengthening. Expecting Matthew to ramp up in strength tonight into the day tomorrow as it interacts with the Bahamas. Those aren't, going to inhibit it from strengthening much. So, quite possibly a Category 4, as this makes a very close run to the east coast of Florida. Now, as I've been saying over the last few days, this is the cone of uncertainty. Your eye is always drawn to the middle of it, but that is not necessarily what the storm will do. It could very well go like this and even make a landfall south of Cape Canaveral and then go right over places like Jacksonville. That's a possibility. It's also possible that it doesn't make a landfall in Florida at all and stays mostly out to sea. And small variations in this track will make a big difference to residents along the east coast of Florida. I mean, 20 miles can make a big difference between seeing a big-time event with 100-mile-per-hour plus winds, or more of a nuisance, might not be the right word, but not as big of a deal. So certainly a very close call for the east coast of Florida. That would be the timing on this for the east coast of Florida, mostly tomorrow night and heading into the day on Friday. And then, boy, have the models been doing a real number on this over the last 24 hours. This trend started yesterday afternoon with the European model. Other models have followed suit. Ridge of high pressure over southern Canada, northern U.S. is going to block this thing from coming north, and it's actually going to head back south and southeast, encountering some wind shear as it gets this far north in latitude, so it will weaken to a Category 2, even a Category 1, maybe even a tropical storm. But nonetheless, this is good news for North Carolina, especially the Outer Banks. Now, this will probably still be a pretty big deal for southeastern North Carolina, closer to Wilmington, and then down into Myrtle Beach, which is near the South and North Carolina border. Here's a look at the GFS and the European model. The track has gotten more similar since last evening when I showed you this animation. Notice Saturday morning, the low is in pretty much the same spot on both models. Both models now have this leveling out and then eventual loop, although the European starts that loop farther north than the GFS, but nonetheless does bend it back to the south then, all thanks to high pressure building across the northern tier of states, putting up the big stop sign. Really interesting to watch the spaghetti model, as we call this, the spaghetti models, a look at a whole bunch of models, and watch this pattern. Whoop! Does a loop-de-loop. There's little loops in there. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that sometime next week, this makes another landfall in Florida. It may come all the way back around and do this. Now, I'm not sure if that's what it will ultimately do, but that's possible anyway. It could also impact the Bahamas again after doing, a number on them over the next 24 hours. So we're going to be talking about Matthew for quite a while. The probability of tropical storm force winds, very high, almost 100%, east coast of Florida. Tropical storm, basically 40 miles per hour and up. The probability of hurricane winds, quite a bit lower, east coast of Florida, but still 50 to 60%, even 70%. North of Miami, kind of between Miami and the Space Coast, which is that little peninsula that hangs off right there. So Florida, the east coast of Florida, in for a long couple of days. Here's our in-house model showing the general path of Matthew. Of course, no impact on our weather. One chance for rain here. That's Saturday morning with a cold front. Could be a couple of showers around, and most of this is even probably before daybreak. By lunchtime, I think this is pushing out. Clouds should break for sun. It'll turn out to be a nice afternoon. On Saturday, rainfall amounts pretty piddling with that front. As you can see, the lines barely move here. There could be 1/10 of an inch, I suppose, in some spots Saturday morning with this. Notice the rainfall totals here through Saturday. Very high, of course, associated with Matthew down in the southeast, while amounts with our cold front uniformly unimpressive across the Ohio Valley. Let's talk briefly about temperatures this weekend. It is going to cool down behind that front Saturday night, Sunday, and especially Sunday night. Look at what the GFS model is doing here Sunday night. Dropping some places down into the 30s. Now, this may be a little too cool, but nonetheless, I can't rule out in the coldest sheltered valleys, I mean the real traditional cold spots, I can't rule out some patches of frost Monday morning. Low-end chance right now, but something I wanted to start putting on people's radars, that it's at least a slim possibility that Monday morning could be cold enough in the coldest spots for some patches of frost. And then it'll warm back up into the 60s Monday afternoon. Real quick look at the longer range upper level pattern here. Here's our cool shot coming in for that second half of the weekend. That moves away. We await the next trough of low pressure coming in as we head towards midweek. Here it comes, dip in the jet stream, and after a warm-up, we'll get a brief cool down perhaps towards the end of next week. But then after that, beyond the 15th here, I can't show you beyond the 15th, but beyond that, there's a ridge out here that I think is going to pretty much envelop the whole country, and it looks very warm by mid-October standards in the kind of 11 to 15-day period. So we're talking starting around the 15th, 16th, and then taking us through at least the 20th, 21st. All right, that is it for Weather Geeks. I've talked long enough. I'll see you tomorrow night on this video, and catch my forecast tonight, 21 News, at 11 o'clock.